Hello and welcome to the Mercenaries TV. My name is Sebastian and today I am back with some very exciting news for not only this channel but potentially also for other people. And without further ado, I want to get into the Mercenaries TV HD project version 1.0. So I've been working on this HD project for the last 4 to 5 weeks, I think. And after it, I was doing some extensive testing, whether there are any bugs or any, stuff that's not working correctly. But I think I'm confident to release this version 1.0 now. And I just want to give you my thought process and how I basically came around to remake a lot of the textures of this game. So yeah, let's get into it. The Mercenaries 3D content on this channel is actually played on the Citra emulator, and I just want to give a shout out to the Citra team, which are doing a fantastic job of making this emulator in the first place, but also keeping it up to date and adding new functionality over time. One of the best Citra features is called texture dumping. The way this works is you enable it in the graphics settings, and the next time you play the game, Citra is storing all the textures that the game is loading into a folder for you to see them. You can also use custom textures and make Citra use them instead of the original ones, and that is actually what I've been doing for this game. So yeah, I just want to talk how I got into this and basically what motivated me to do this. I did some research one day how I could improve my experience with the Citra emulator for Merc 3D, and I found out that there are some codes called hex codes that you can input into a cheat code module in Citra. These codes control different elements of the graphical rendering, like for example frame rate or anti-aliasing, and while there was a 60 FPS render code for Merc 3D, unfortunately, it's not working correctly because the hit detection is really inconsistent and bullets are going through enemies at times, so yeah, there's really no practical use for it. However, one code which proved very usable was the disabling of anti-aliasing, which completely gets rid of it. While the AA does not look bad on a 3DS screen, I think it doesn't translate very well to a bigger PC screen where the picture just looks smeared out and mushy. So by disabling the anti-aliasing, I think you get a way sharper picture, and it's very beneficial, I think. The trade-off for this are some blocky textures and some aliased elements in the picture, but I think it's a trade-off that is well worth it. So yeah, I've played the game with anti-aliasing off for quite some time now, and it just looks so much better. While doing my research on these codes, I also came across an upscale texture pack for Merc 3D, which basically just upscaled the original textures. And while upscaling is not a bad thing to increase the resolution of a picture, it gets problematic if the pictures are as small as they are for a Nintendo 3DS game. The resolution of the original Nintendo 3DS is actually 800 x 240 pixels, which is very low, and so the textures which were required for it are actually very low in file size and in pixel size. That means that even the best upscalers in the world cannot do much with such small file sizes. So I noticed it when looking through the texture pack that a lot of the edges were not really sharp, and it gets this kind of blurred out effect sometimes, and they just weren't looking too good, to be honest. Now, one thing I also want to say is that Citra has some internal resolution scaling which actually works on a processor level, and while it works well for the actual in-game textures like characters and enemies and also the stages itself, it just doesn't work very well for heads-up display, numbers, letters, and tiny stuff that is in like very small texture sizes. So yeah, that was my main concern with this pack, and that is what I concentrated on. So the first thing I concentrated on were the fonts, the typefaces that were used in this game. In this particular game, it uses 2 different typefaces, and I thought this would be, I think, the most important thing because it actually improves the readability of a lot of stuff and it has the most practical use. Especially for the timer in-game, it was very important, because it also has a lot of practical use for the skill called Lucky 7, which wants you to time your moves and your attacks correctly, so whenever you kill an enemy, there is a 7 in the timer. And of course, it gets better if you can see the numbers and if you can differentiate between them better. I actually did some research on typefaces and the readability of numbers to find a font which is suiting for this and which has a great readability of numbers, and I think I found it. And it just so happens that this font also looks pretty great in terms of its letters. So yeah, because this font is used in a lot of different places, like you can see here on the screen. It's used on the timer, it's used for the combo counter, it's also used for many other elements in this game. And this is a very bold typeface, which is really clear in terms of readability. Yeah, I mean, this one looks, I think, way better than the original digital one. And of course, most importantly, it translates very well with the internal resolution scaling, because the texture, I think, is 16 times bigger than the original ones in terms of pixel count. So even if you upscale with Citra, it will look good, and it will look even better the higher you upscale. So yeah, this was like the first point that I worked on. And then there is the secondary typeface here, which is used for other elements in this game, like it's basically these two typefaces. And it was pretty difficult to find a good typeface for this one, because the one that Capcom used was a monospaced typeface, which means that every letter and every number takes up the same real estate horizontally. And it was pretty difficult to find one which did match the original in terms of the size, but I eventually found one. And yeah, I mean, the fonts, I think, are just the most important and yeah, most practical stuff that I could change for this, and this is how it all started. Now, once I finished the typefaces, I decided that I most importantly wanted to change everything from the heads-up display that is seen during a run, and everything that you can see here on the screen is completely reworked in HD. It now has sharp edges, and I basically try to be as faithful as possible and not change too much stuff. You know, some stuff I actually had to rebuild completely. But yeah, I deemed it most, you know, useful if the stuff that you can actually see during a run is reworked, because there are many textures, especially for the main menu, that I did not rework. But I was thinking, well, you don't spend much time in the main menu, so I mean, there's really no point in doing that. But eventually I will do it in the future, and that's why I called this HD project version 1.0. The next big thing after the typefaces that I changed were the weapon icons that you can see here. And that was actually a very massive project in and of itself, because I needed to locate all these weapons and find good pictures for all of them. And yeah, just, you know, cut them out so there is transparency in the background, and yeah, just prepare them so they all look kind of uniform and look great. Eventually I was able to do it, but I have to say it was a very difficult, or let's say time-consuming job, because the automatic pixel masks that a photo manipulation software is doing just won't do the job very well, especially for long straight edges. It just doesn't look very good. So what you have to do is make a vector mask, which you have to trace around the weapon like manually, and that takes quite some time. But yeah, I mean, it is what it is, and it looks way better if you do it this way, and I wanted to make it look as good as it can be. So I'm very happy that I did it. I am also very happy with the weapon models themselves that I could find on the internet. They all have this kind of pretty much realistic look to it. And yeah, even the ones where I thought they were harder to find, I could actually locate some very good models, like Krauser's bow, for example, or you know, even the knife from Krauser. And one thing I actually like, the double-barreled grenade launcher. I had to do some photo manipulation and some trickery to actually kind of Photoshop a second barrel into the grenade launcher, and I think it's looking okay. I mean, I could have probably spent way more time on that thing, but yeah, I think it's good the way it is. What I also updated were the ammo boxes that you can pick up, grenades and herbs, and you know, every pickup basically in the game. is also updated to be HD quality. And where I got these files is from Resident Evil 5. I started this game up and ripped all of the textures from RE5, which I think the original Mercenaries 3D files were from RE5. So yeah, I think it was just fitting, and it looks seamlessly great. And yeah, the next part I was working on is the health bar and this like health circle on the right. And yeah, that was like a very tedious one, you know, and to understand that, I have to show you one of the textures and how it actually looks. So these texture files, they are basically like sheets where you have multiple texture elements on one picture, and they are arranged in this picture, and the game draws them via a coordinate system, I think. So you basically have to put them in the original place, otherwise the game just won't draw them correctly. Now the problem here is that Capcom used circles, like 100% perfect circles for most elements. However, for the display of your actual health, they use this quarter circle texture. And so the way it works is it stacks up multiple times on top of each other to display different amounts of health. However, the coordinate system or something just didn't work correctly 100%. So this kind of is a sloppy work, if I'm honest. No offense to Capcom, of course, but yeah, it just won't form a 100% perfect circle. I tried to fix it myself, and I think it's okay now. But yeah, it even was so in the original game. You just wouldn't notice it because the texture quality was so low, but especially with HD textures, you can notice every little detail. And yeah, I mean, this took me quite some time to get it right. Now, what I also changed is the mission start and mission end header that is basically coming on screen if you start or end a run. And that wasn't too big of a work, but yeah, something I still wanted to do, so I'm happy that I did it. So yeah, it has this overall congruent look, and everything is working well together. You might have noticed that there are like PlayStation button prompts in this game now, and might ask yourself, well, what is that all about? The reason is I play this game on a DualShock 4 controller, and I use a program called DS for Windows, which enables me to send the touchscreen data to Citra and basically use the touchscreen like in the original game. Now, why is this helpful? In the original game, you could press on the map, which was on the right side of the touchscreen, to basically look around you while still running straight and, you know, while not having your running affected by looking around. And if you then aim your weapon, you would perform these quick 90-degree turns, which I think are a massive part of this Mercenaries experience. And yeah, for anyone who's serious and wants to play this game and wants to experience it the best way, get a DualShock 4 controller and play it that way. And because of that, I decided to actually put the PlayStation prompts in here. If someone is actually requesting it, I might change it back to the original Nintendo layout, but I think most players won't have a problem since they know the PlayStation button prompts as well and just need some adaptation to it. So yeah, I just did it because I play it on a DualShock 4, and I am definitely, and I'm 100% convinced that that is the best way to play it. I actually have not tried a DualSense controller, and I don't know if that might give you, you know, better haptic or something. But yeah, I play it on a DualShock 4, and that is working perfectly. Additionally, also the results screen is now completely HD. So it again is congruent with the rest of this HD pack. I also gave the touchscreen a cool new design. It's now also HD, with the exception of the maps itself. I mean, I could do that. I actually found the map textures in the texture dump of Citra. But yeah, I mean, people are not using the maps that often anyways. And yeah, I just thought that just having the touchscreen is enough. The last elements that I reworked are like concerning the main menu. Like for example, in the character selection screen, the character portraits are now also HD, and also the characters on these little icons here are also HD. And the last big project I actually worked on were the skill symbols that I first didn't want to rework, but I thought like, well, I mean, these are shown on the touchscreen. And I had some other great uses for my own channel here as well, which I'm going to get into later. So I thought like, well, I just have to do it. This was another major part of this whole project because I had to rework these skills from scratch. The original textures were so small in size, and yeah, so I actually had to sit down and trace around all these skill symbols and boxes and yeah, just make them HD quality. And I, stick to the original design, of course. And yeah, I think it turned out pretty nice. But yeah, I mean, that's everything that I did for this game and for this HD project version 1.0. Like I said, there are many textures that I didn't rework because I deemed them not as important, and I might actually do them in the future. But I think all the stuff that I showcased here now is greatly adding to the overall, just playability of this game. It just looks so much better if everything is HD and you can read all that stuff. And like I said, especially for Lucky 7 aiming, I'm a very visual guy. I look at the numbers, I look at the timer, and it just makes a big difference, I think, in terms of accuracy and seeing what's going on the timer. Now lastly, I also updated my overlay for the videos that I will put out on this channel. And now the skills are displayed on the right side of the health circle, which I think looks a little bit more streamlined and sleek than the original overlay. And most importantly, the editing time for a video once I finish a run is gone down massively, because on the original overlay I had to duplicate my video source I think 4 times and put different elements under this overlay, which takes around 20 minutes or so per video. And yeah, I just can use this time better with other stuff. And on the top right here of the screen, you also now see a Lucky 7 accuracy display, which basically shows you on how many enemies I correctly timed the melee or just the kill to get the Lucky 7 bonus, and it also shows it in percentage. So yeah, that is just a metric that I want to track myself. I think it's very interesting to see how accurate you are and how much room there is for improvement. So yeah, I hope this new overlay is appreciated by viewers. At least it is for me. I really like it, and it just looks way more streamlined because it blends in with the original design way better. So I think that's it for this showcase of this HD project. And these texture files will be available for download on my YouTube page, on the main page, on the banner, or under the links category. You will find it. And the installation guide will also be inside this download. It's actually very simple to do it. Just follow the instructions, and if you need help, you can also consult Google, which will help you where to put these custom texture files. And yeah, I hope you like it. And this was a very interesting process for me of creating all these things. Yeah, and I'm very happy that I did it, because this game, I think, just looks a little bit more modernized now. And since I enjoy it really a lot, I was like super happy to have the opportunity to do this. So let me know what you guys think about this. And yeah, until next time, have a great time. I hope you're well, and may the living God bless you in Jesus Christ's name.